And the reason I was asking about how long GMG has been in Bamako in Mali was because one of the things that I've been sort of familiar with from afar, but was sort of brought to my attention more specifically by you, um, was Mali's performance in youth tournaments. And I think sometimes they go under the radar, the youth international tournaments, the under-17 World Cups, the under-20 World Cups, the under-17 and under-20 AFCON tournaments. And just going through the list here, we've got Mali finished third at the under-20 World Cup in 2015. And they had, Adama Traore, not that one, the one who was briefly at Monaco, and Diadie Samassékou in that team. They finished runners up at the under-17 World Cup in 2015, which was a team which had a Sékou Koïta, who I believe was 15 at the time, and Amadou Haidara, who's obviously made waves in European football. They won that year in 2015. They won the under-17 African Cup of Nations. Mamadou Fofana and Sékou Koïta in that. Then they won it again 2 years later in 2017 with Mohamed Kamara, who is at Red Bull Salzburg now, plays in midfield, and Salam Jidou, as you mentioned earlier, who we really liked at the under-17 World Cup and we really had high hopes for. And then they also won the under-20 African Cup of Nations in 2019. Again, Sékou Koïta taking part in that team. Boubou Conte, who's now at Sarpsborg, Amadou Dante at Sturm Graz, Lassana Ndai at CSKA Moscow, Ousmane Diakité, who's at Red Bull Salzburg as well, El Bilal Touré, who's at Stade Reims. There's so many players within these youth international teams that have gone on to forge careers in Europe, and it's the evidence is there, for want of a better phrase. Over the past 5 or 6, 7 years, the threat that Mali could leave a mark on African football, or at the very least qualify for a senior World Cup, has been there because they've been impressive in youth tournaments. What from sort of doing your background and perhaps watching them yourself. What is there an indelible mark of the JMG Academy on the way that Mali's youth teams have played over that period?
I mean, absolutely. You see a lot of technical players in those teams, and what I learned from speaking to Mamadou is how a lot of academies like to model their structures nowadays in Mali on JMG. So you have they've earned lots of inspiration from the success of JMG in Mali, and there's a few academies propping up now that are having not the same level of success as JMG, but are producing quality players, and that's where Sékou Koïta, El Bilal Touré, Moussa Djenepo, who didn't come through JMG, but have still been able to come to Europe and forge careers. And I think what I'm really impressed by in these Mali international squads is a lot of the times you have nations doing well in international competitions, but then their star players kind of drop off. I mean, recently Ukraine won the under-20 World Cup, if I'm correct, and
Yeah.
they didn't really have the same level of success, those players. Whereas with Mali, all their key players like Haidara, like Samassékou, are playing at top level senior football at European clubs. And I think that's really impressive, the way they've been able to come through at senior level, and the integration and the step up to that, it can be a challenge for some players, but for these Malian players, they've handled it well.
So I suppose looking ahead to 2022, to next year, the World Cup is obviously coming up. I think it will be enormously successful if, Mali would be, enormously successful if they were to qualify for that tournament. Based on the players that we've discussed before, the Haidaras, Samassékous, Djenepos, Bissoumas, Bilal Toure's, the Sékou, Koïta, Kamara. There's so many. I'm just rattling off names here that I've got on a sheet. But they've got a reasonable chance of qualifying for that tournament because they've got Rwanda, Kenya, and Uganda in their qualification group, which they're not exactly footballing powerhouses. You wouldn't say that you could. Perhaps, off the top of your head, you couldn't exactly name a 1 to 11 of those sides. And if they come through that group, if they win that group, they'll face a qualification playoff, and then it's down to sort of 1 or 2 games that are deciding sort of the future, and possibly the most pivotal moment of a country's footballing history. Is this the best chance that they're going to have? And I suppose, is this a reflection of how influential the JMG Academy has been, and just the raising of the floor of the coaching structure in Mali has been since JMG's arrival 15 years ago?
2022, I wouldn't say is the best chance. They have a good chance depending on the draw, and like you said, the group is fairly easy. But I think 2026, if I'm correct, there's going to be, instead of 5 African teams qualifying for the tournament, it's going to be 9. And I think with those extra teams, I think Mali have a really good chance to get to the 2026 tournament. They'll, players like Bissouma and Samassékou, Haidara, Koïta will all be at their prime. But at the same time, you also have the younger players, like I mentioned, Habib Keita and the 3 players who moved to Salzburg, who are going to be kind of in their early 20s. And so they might also play an influence in that team or in that squad. And I think that will be, if they don't qualify for that World Cup, that will be a major disappointment for Malian football, because I think that's a huge opportunity. And in theory, their best players or their key figures should be in their prime.
I suppose it shows just how difficult it is to sort of, or how long it takes to actually impart, excellent coaching and a structure like that on a country. People may assume that 5 years may be enough to help a country sort of raise their collective level. But as we're seeing, JMG came in, and I'm not saying that JMG is the sole reason for Mali sort of improving on the international scale. But for them to have come in 2007, realistically, the first time that they've had a great chance of qualifying for a major tournament, or a World Cup, has been sort of 2022 and 2026. That's 15-20 years in the making. That's a generation worth of players that have had to be nurtured to get to this stage.